Call to order, please. Approval of the minutes of the previous meeting. Liz?
Yeah,
Liz, thank you for doing these.
Yes, Liz.
you're welcome.
Liz wasn't here and did a beautiful job.
I told you I was impressed.
Yes.
Yes,
All
thank
right,
you.
we've got Jan, are you on? Can you hear Jan? Patrick, hello? All right, hopefully they'll tune in shortly. Could I have we need you to vote, guys.
I'll move the minutes.
Okay, thank you. Second?
Second.
Kayla?
Yep.
Oh, good, there's Jan. Patrick, could you sign on? All those in favor, Liz?
We have to do, yeah.
Hi.
I'm gonna move
Aye.
it. Hi, Bruce. I'm gonna move it there so I'm facing the screen.
Is that five?
Yeah.
Yeah, Jan.
Hi, Jan.
Okay, thank you all. What?
Is that yours?
Oh, yes, come on. I'm going to move really quickly through these first items. Because the purpose of this meeting is to discuss our next steps with the Glendale Middle Road land. And we have a number of neighbors here, which is good. And I'd like, well, when we get to that, I'll say. Jan, the September 17th meeting,
Yes,
I'd like to talk about the housing production plan.
yes. I wanted to make sure everyone is aware that we are back on the agenda for the planning board meeting on September 17th. And I'm going to be doing a brief kind of overview of the plan again for the planning board. I believe that this is going to be a public hearing, so there probably will be quite a few people there. I would encourage everyone who can come to please come to that planning board meeting where we'll have a discussion of it. And I think after the discussion, the planning board is assuming they will take a vote on whether to approve the housing production plan.
Jan, is that at 6?
Pardon?
6:30.
6:30?
6:30.
Thank you.
Okay. Is there anyone who's here now on the group that knows that they can't come?
Yes.
You're not.
Yeah, I'll be out of town.
Okay,
I can come.
you can come. Oh, Jan, you'll be there. I'll be there. Yeah, Patrick, are you there? Could you
Yes,
sign-
can you hear me?
You're shouting, you're shouting.
First, I believe the planning board meeting started at 7, not 6:30.
I'm on the planning board. It starts at 6:30.
They do. Oh, so is it the select board that starts at 7? I forget. All right.
Yeah, Patrick, we love you, but.
Yeah, you're coming in very loud and clear.
Okay.
You can tone
Not so
down.
loud then. Can you just give us a run through? I had some technical difficulties of what the agenda is and the approach the planning board is taking to the review of this.
Patrick, you're hurting our eardrums. I don't know.
Could you-
Don't shout into the phone.
Could you,
Okay.
yeah,
Trust the technology. It'll get you.
okay, Jan, do you want to re-summarize what you just said?
Well, I believe that the intent is of the planning board is to have a public hearing on this. And so I'm assuming that I need to do a maybe 5-10 minute overview of the housing production plan. I mean, that said, this will be the third time coming to the planning board. And I've gone over this twice before with the planning board. So I don't know how much discussion they're intending to have of it, but that's the extent of what I know of the planning board agenda.
My understanding is to go over the changes, just to see what was done, to review that.
Well, the only changes that have been made since the last time we were there is that the table of contents is now clickable, which Kate wanted to have. And there is in table 1.1, there is an additional reference to the short-term rentals and that will be being reviewed and the planning board would be reviewing that over the next year or so. And then there is also a reference to, on I believe page 62, to the fact that the ADU bylaw will be reviewed also during the next year. And that'll be primarily a function of after the state's
Yes.
passage of their ADU bill and whether the planning board wants to have other modifications to that bylaw. But those are two things that are really in the planning board's court in terms of addressing those. So I imagine that they want to know that those are in the housing production plan going forward, and they are.
Can I make a comment? I'll try not to talk too loud. How is that?
Okay.
No,
A little less,
softer,
a little less.
little softer.
Okay. Let's bear in mind that the law has been passed and it goes into effect in February. Now, any bylaw that we put forth at town meeting has to be approved by the Attorney General, and that typically doesn't happen until the October, December timeframe. So in the absence of having a special town meeting to address some of these issues, Liz, you guys are leaving us open to 10 months of Wild West, because as soon as people put in a special permit request or whatever, they're locked into the old bylaw.
Mhm.
So there's actually a fair amount of urgency with this stuff, because when it comes to the tiny homes and the undersized lot issue, remember a undersized lot can be 3.9 acres in R4. We're not talking about postage stamp pieces of property. The entire town is going to be at risk for people to do whatever they want. And I think we have to recognize that we got to figure this out right now, because we should probably have a special town meeting come November, December, with whatever we're going to bring forward, so that the Attorney General can have the bylaws in place by February.
Okay.
It sounds like, Patrick, what you're saying is that with the new state law, we need to change our bylaws.
There are certain things I think that we need to recognize, which is that that the ADU bylaw, which is generally great, if there's not a restriction on short-term rentals, it'll exacerbate the housing crisis, in my opinion, because you're going to increase the cash flow per property. So, we're going to just need to look at the ways that we want to not be, we know what we need to do. Well, let's make sure that our laws are in place to do it.
I think though, in terms of the trust, does it affect our housing production plan or anything that we're doing? It
I
sounds
think
like
the only thing that that we might want to look at as a trust, and this is a reasonable question for the planning board even, is with the ability to preference municipal employees, whether we want to have some priorities around municipal employee housing, because we know it's going to be a bigger issue. Michael Canals makes like $1.50 and he can't afford to live in Stockbridge. All right. I'm just saying, like, we know what it's going to look like 10 or 20 years from now. And prioritizing municipal housing might be something that towns like Stockbridge avail themselves of. But I think that's a discussion that we should put on the agenda and then talk about.
Do we have any really power though to affect these bylaws?
There's
The
only
trust.
one place where, as far as I can tell, it says shall instead of may. So in legal speak, if someone says you may do something, then we have to pass a bylaw to do it. The only place I believe that it says shall has to do with allowing building.
Uh-oh.
We lost you. We lost you. Patrick, it sounds like this is a subject we need to bring up at our next meeting because we have a very full agenda right now, if that's okay. But thank you for raising it. And I assume the planning board, Liz, is going to be addressing
Yeah, but
these issues.
we've got plans. We've got plans to address them.
Okay. Thank you, Patrick. And so please, if you can be at the planning board on the 17th, we'd like to have as many from the trust as possible, right, Jen? I know Bruce is not going to be able to come and
I'll be in Minneapolis.
Mark is out of town, but Michaela, myself, you, Liz, oh, Liz will be there.
I
And,
have to.
and do we lose Patrick? I think, Patrick, where are you?
Fine.
Yeah, we lost him.
Done.
Is he gone?
Yep, he's not
Seems
on.
to be gone.
Okay, hopefully he'll come back. Just a quick update, so you know that I think you know that we had, we Stockbridge, as a town are participating with Egremont and Great Barrington and have been awarded $1.3 million under, the Housing Rehabilitation Program that's, funded by what used to be our housing, it's called the Office of Housing and Livable Communities. So our consultant has secured the grant. However, it will probably, through a series of bureaucratic steps that have to happen, it will not be available to be distributed until after Thanksgiving, when the various entities have been appointed. But we expect the Berkshire Community Development Group and Dawn Lemon, we're hopeful, will be appointed as the managers of the grant. And I want to bring it up because each one, as you know, at our last grant, no one from Stockbridge received any funds for their homes. And this is a $70,000 grant that people, if you're eligible for it, you can improve your house, your roof, your windows, insulation. But it's a first come, first serve. We hope to have 5 units. In other words, 5 homeowners should be able to apply for a portion of the grant. And so unfortunately, nothing is distributed till Dawn Lemon has been appointed, or someone else has been appointed to administer the grant. But I want to keep track on this and the timing and see if we can each, as a member of the trust, at least contact one person and encourage them to apply. It's an application that's this thick, sadly. But it's first come, first serve. And so if you're aware of it and you comply with the various regulations, the biggest
Hey,
one.
Randy?
Yes. Hello?
Is it your feeling that Dawn's going to have a problem?
I'm sorry, Patrick.
Is it your sense that I think Dawn's a shoo-in.
She's not appointed yet, so I'm just trying to be appropriately conservative on this point. Let's hope she is, because she's fabulous. Absolutely. I don't think there's anyone who works harder than Dawn Lemon does. But anyway, there are requirements, there are packages of information, and I just would like the trust to be reaching out and encouraging people. 21 people have applied, have sent in pre-applications. But Dawn tells me that you can't, they may not all qualify. So
Is there a way to advertise this other than the town website? Like, is there a way to put up flyers for people to let them know that it's a thing?
I don't know whether you can, it's publicly stated that that the 3 towns have the grant.
Okay.
But until the people who got the grant, which are the 2 women that we affiliated with to get in this, until they appoint the equivalent
Right.
of BCD.
Sure,
And then they appoint someone the equivalent of Dawn,
sure.
I'm
And
told.
once that happens, are we able to kind of like put it out there?
I think so, but if all these other people, like Lennox also got the grant under a different grant.
Yeah.
And they have a package. And so what we need to do is see if we can get at least a package here in town hall. And then figure out if maybe we can put it on the website
Yeah.
and
Transfer station.
transfer station. perfect.
Yeah.
Put it at the transfer station. Everybody goes to the transfer
I
station.
just, because, you go around town and there's so many flyers for things and that's sort of how a lot of people find out about stuff. And
Right.
So I'm just wondering what the stipulations are in terms of.
We're
being
allowed,
able
we're
put
allowed
that
to
out there.
advertise it, right?
It'd be a good question.
We need to get, I'm just waving the flag that this is in the works, but I've been told it's now September, so October, November. So it's a couple more months,
Okay.
2 months before, as soon as as she is, assuming she will be appointed, then people can start turning their applications in, and people need to start filling them out now. So we ought to find some way to get the information out. So people can, it's kind of crazy what you have to do to get this, but if you get it, and I think it's 5 years, if you live in your house 5 years, it's
Yeah,
given.
yeah.
It's a very, very attractive
Where can we
way.
see the applications now? Is there a place to find them, download them?
No, there isn't.
Okay.
I got this through Lennox.
It would be helpful, I guess, is what I'm asking, to contact whoever is the point person for this right now and ask what our possibilities are for getting the word out.
It's the, I've forgotten their names, but the mother-daughter who are the ones that got the grant for us.
Uh-huh.
I think that's the appropriate,
People to talk to.
so I will do that.
Okay.
And send everybody a note.
That'd be great.
All right.
There's somebody with their hand up.
Chelsea.
Chelsea, hello, Chelsea?
Hi, I have a question about this application. Is there anywhere people can view the qualifications for applicants? Do you know what the application deadline will be?
The only information I can give you is what I just said, which is we expect that this person, Dawn, we hope, will be appointed by Thanksgiving. And once she's appointed, then she's already reached out and had meetings in the different towns to tell them about it. But the only application I have is from last year. So we don't expect it will be changed very much. But I'm sure town hall will have them when they can be released. So I realize this isn't very clear information, but
You know,
all we
I
have.
remember on the one that we didn't get, I remember researching that a little bit. And Chelsea, online, there was a lot of information about how to apply and what the qualifications were and whatnot that may have changed slightly from the last time to this one, but probably not that much. So if you look up, CDBG grant program, just trying to think what the best
Well,
word
Randy,
would be.
that's sort of my question to Randy. So I think Randy will check on this and then maybe we can try to follow up.
Chelsea, you can send, if you go online, you can send an email to the Affordable Housing Trust. And I'll look for that because it comes into all of us. And I can send you a link for you to get more information that, again, may be updated slightly for this round, but probably is pretty close to what we're dealing with. So can you do that, do you think?
Yeah, absolutely.
Get on the town website and you can find a way to contact the Affordable Housing Trust and we'll send you something.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Moving along I really want to get through this stuff as fast as we can. We need to approve up to $5,000 to finish our survey of the land so we can identify precisely the point at the top of the entrance, so we can define that. And Heather Brown, who's the survey person at Foresight, has done the work so far. Could I have a motion to approve, getting the rest of the work done?
So moved.
Second?
Second?
Thank you. All those in favor?
Bruce, aye.
Jan, you want to
Hi,
start?
Jan.
Liz?
Hi, Liz.
Patrick? Okay.
Hi, Mark.
Hi, Randy.
Hi, Michaela.
Okay, I think that's 6 out of 7. All
I said
right.
aye.
Oh, you were muted.
You were muted. We didn't hear you.
Happy to hear you.
Happy to hear you, please. Okay, I cannot find Joanna. I lost all my contacts, and so I don't have Joanna's phone number. But she told me that the playground is in and the mulch is in. And her son is extremely happy, and the children have written us a thank you note. So I had hoped that Joanna and her son might be here, but at our next meeting, hopefully they'll come, but they're very pleased. And the little play set is there. And so the children of Pine Woods have a healthy and new and much more expanded playground equipment.
That's great.
So
Wonderful.
that's a nice thing. I need a vote also. We discussed last time the appointment of Kathleen O'Donnell as our trust attorney. At the time, I think, Patrick, you raised the question about talking to Michael, which I've done. And Michael said, you know, we have full authority to retain whoever we want. I'm recommending that we retain Kathleen. There's no retainage fee. She is giving us a much cheaper hourly rate, and she is, I think,
What is the
Jen?
rate?
it's, I think, 200.
I think you said 150.
Did I say 150 last time?
I think that's what it was.
All
I
right,
think
good.
that's in the minutes.
All right, if that's in the minutes.
And just
And then-
remind me, what is her experience in housing trusts?
Her exclusive practice is representing housing trusts. She was involved in the writing of the original trust documents for the state. She was recommended to us by the Mass Housing Partnership. And when you ask about lawyers who know most about trusts, housing trusts, affordable housing trusts, her name comes up. And Jan, you had a chance to meet her over Zoom and a conversation that we had with her this summer. And maybe, would you like to just get your impression after our conversation?
She seemed very knowledgeable about the activities of what the trust can and cannot do, and provided some good advice in terms of steps forward on a couple of things. So yes, I was very impressed. And I think, Mark, you were in on that discussion.
Yeah, she was excellent. That'd be very helpful. We need to get this expertise to.
Thank you for reminding me our hourly rate. I know that she gave us a low rate.
It's very reasonable.
A very reasonable rate and lower than our town council. And she's available for help on the phone, and she's available today if we want to give her a call as we go into our discussion. Could I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Michaela, second. All those in favor?
Hi, Bruce.
Hi, Jan.
Hi, Patrick.
Hi, Liz.
Hi, Randy.
Hi, Mark.
I'm Michaela.
Okay, unanimous. Thank you very much. Okay, we did it now to the purpose of this meeting. Bruce, can we start with, well, may I start with just an overall comment? And Eileen, can you hear me? If you can, would you sign in? I know you're listening. That
Yeah,
looks
I'm
like-
here.
Oh, terrific.
I was half listening and half doing other things, so
Okay.
don't quiz me on it.
All right. You didn't have to know anything about what we just did.
Okay.
For those of you, and those of you in the audience, Eileen is the CEO of what used to be called Berkshire Housing and is now called Heathway. Is that Hearthway?
Pathway.
Hearthway. And is responsible for the management of what, about 1,200 units? Is that right? It
Yeah,
is-
about 1,000 apartments and about 1,000 vouchers and we're developers of affordable housing and other stuff, but that's not the purpose.
Right. So it's the largest county's affordable housing developer and manager. And Eileen's I think you've been there, what, 4 years as the CEO?
3.5.
No, I was close. And I have had the opportunity on several occasions to visit with Eileen about various questions, and she has agreed to be party to our discussions and a resource to us as we focus on how we're going to move forward in developing this land. So thank you, Eileen, for coming. And I don't know if you want to say any words of introduction of yourself. If you do, please feel free.
I don't know that that's necessary. I'm just happy, to be here and help. I guess I will mention, that I personally have a pretty extensive background in home ownership development and rental development. Hearthway's focus in the recent 25 years has been very much on the rental side, but its first 25 years was a lot about home ownership as well. So I think we're comfortable, providing some guidance across the board and to help you kind of see if we can help you guys find some direction for what seems like a really wonderful opportunity with this piece of land.
I also may mention, that in addition to saying thank you for joining us, is that Eileen was on the governor's task force that wrote the housing bill that just passed. Do I have that names correct, Eileen?
Yeah, I was part of the bond bill discussions. I was actually on the governor's transition committee, a couple of different transition committees where we started to frame this out to what eventually became the Affordable Homes Act, which was passed recently.
So Eileen, thank you. And also she has offered to be a resource and a consultant to us as we move forward. So I would like to start with Bruce. I know you're trying to track down the sewer water costs for the property and how we're going to find out what the costs are.
Well, we already got, at a prior meeting, we already discussed the water costs that the director of the water department basically provided for us because he was able to do that from his existing plans. He was unable, he said an engineer would need to be engaged in order to determine sewer costs. And we have a proposal, a preliminary proposal from David Prickett, who has an engineering company that does this and has basically done this for the town over the years. He has provided us a preliminary evaluation, preliminary estimate for doing an analysis with estimating average and peak flow rates for a 60-bedroom parcel and evaluating the downstream wastewater, low pressure pump, et cetera, all of those issues. And it would cost, he has estimated, he's basically given us a proposal for $7,900 in order to do that preliminary analysis. That number excludes any follow-up actions that might be necessary as a result of the summary memo and the telecom discussion that he has with us after they present that information to us. So any additional work beyond that they need to do in terms of an exact sewer system layout and the like would basically be additional costs. But we would I would love to have a motion for us to approve us to spend $7,900 to engage David Prickett's company to do the preliminary evaluation for a sewer system so that we can have a really good handle on what it would cost to actually provide sewage for 60 bedrooms. And if we choose to do something with less bedrooms, we downgrade, what he gives us. If we want to do more, we gross it up, but we'll at least have a baseline that we can, from which we can start.
Okay.
Could they give us, in his estimate, like 20 bedroom to 60 bedroom? Like, I don't know that mathematically 30 bedrooms would be half of 60 or because there's a lot of costs that would be involved with whatever you do.
Well, I initially, because from the meeting, several meetings ago, when we basically first asked me, when I was first engaged or charged to pursue this,
Right.
We talked about having him look at a 20 bedroom and a 60 bedroom.
Okay.
And he basically, in his preliminary proposal, he basically said 20 bedroom would be 7,500, 60 bedroom would be 7,900. Those are separate and distinct entities. And so we Randy and I talked about it and we decided that we figured that there was really not a huge benefit to paying him an extra $7,500 for the 20 bedroom analysis. Let's see what the 60 bedroom analysis gets us, and then we can basically figure out whether to go up or down from there.
So Bruce if he is giving us one for 60 bedrooms, there may be some of the equipment or some of the cost that would be included in that estimate that would be not required if it were, let's say, 20 bedrooms. And if he gives us the estimate for 60, could he indicate in that which are the things that are require a threshold above a certain level in order for that cost to kick in? And if it were fewer bedrooms than that, it would not require, cost XYZ.
When I get back to him, assuming that we approve some dollar figure to engage Prickett Engineering, then I can certainly, when I get back to him, have the discussion of whether he anticipates that there's anything for a 60 bedroom analysis that would really be very much on top of a 20 bed, given that his two proposals are only $400 apart. It doesn't sound to me like there's going to be a lot in the 60 bedroom proposal that was additive because of the magnitude of 60 bedrooms versus 20. I mean, he said 20 bedrooms, it would cost, his analysis would cost $7,500. 60 bedrooms would cost $7,900. So it doesn't sound like there's a lot of additional work. It sounds like, kind of the same work, just with more bedrooms. So I think I will ask that question, but I think I have a feeling that his answer will be, it really would be minimal.
Jackie, I'm going to hold you until the end. There's a lot of work we have to do, so I apologize. I welcome your questions, but we can't get off track. So, does anybody have any further question on this? If not, could we get a motion to approve retaining, is it called Pritchard Engineering?
It is called,
DPC Engineering LLC.
Well,
it's his initials.
DPC
Yeah.
Engineering.
Okay. All
I
right.
guess my only question is, so, I mean, in order to move forward at all, this has to be done.
Yes.
Correct? Otherwise,
In order to move forward at all, we need him to do the analysis of to give us a sense of what it would cost. I mean, I think that if I remember correctly from when we last talked about it, the water was going to be about $1 million. And so we need to know whether the sewage is going to be, $500,000 or $3 million. And we need someone to do this in order to understand that.
Is this the consultant that already works for the town on our
Yes.
water and sewer?
Yes, DPC's the one.
Very familiar with our.
Yes, they're very familiar. That's, they basically recommended him.
Yeah.
I just want to say, like, my feeling, I mean, I wouldn't be on this committee if I didn't want to advocate for affordable housing. I think it's super important and challenging and nuanced and emotional and difficult and but it's the problem right now in this country. My question, I guess, if I'm like putting myself in the shoes of our neighbors or a taxpayer in this town, which I am, is if we are looking at $1 million for the water, and then this guy comes back and says it's going to be another 500,000 on top of that.
way more.
Right.
Not even close.
And what, is there a realistic path forward to be able to obtain those resources to make headway into this? Because I could understand a frustration with us spending this money without any realistic path forward. So I don't know if that's a naive question.
No.
No, I think it's a good question. I would say that, look, we have this parcel. We don't really know what its potential is. And we have to determine what could conceivably happen with it. And there's a certain amount of expense involved in getting to that point. And I think I sort of understand where you're coming from, because I have the same thought that all of these infrastructure questions, all of these infrastructure costs could get to be so big that it totally offsets the value of having the free land.
Right.
Yes.
I mean, if it just costs ridiculous amounts of money to make it buildable, then what's the point? It's a nice gesture, but if it's not realistic, we may have to face that at some point.
Right.
But I think the only way to get to that information is to spend money that could in the end be blown money. But I think we have an obligation to know what the potential is for this site. And we're going to have to put some money out to do it, even though it may be dead money in the end. It will lead us into making an appropriate decision for the town. That's my view of it.
Can
I
I
think-
just jump in for a sec here?
Yeah, that'd be great.
So, great, it's a great question, not at all a naive question. And it's a question you're gonna ask yourself over and over again throughout this process, right? One of the things we say in the development world is, you only know the brick wall that's in front of you that you have to scale. And then you scale it, and then there's another one, right? And I mean, as you do it more and more, you get a little better sense of it. But this is one of the early ones to size up, and probably the most important one on this project is what is it going to cost to bring utilities to the site and also develop them on the site. So just to clarify, this engineering work is only bringing it to the site, to the entrance. Is that what?
That's correct.
Yeah, so for that work, that really would be the work of the town. There are potential grants that will pay for that. So it sounds like, and it's going to be more than 500,000. The whole thing's going to be probably a couple million, maybe more, but that doesn't mean that, the citizens of Stockbridge would be paying for that. There are resources that might work for us for that. So that, to give you a little more comfort, spend that $700-900 right now.
Thank you. That was kind of what I was wondering. Okay, thank you.
Sorry, Madam Chair. So someone who's not on the committee can speak, but the public can't speak. Has your consultant, is she your official consultant?
Yes, she's here to help us,
I
Jackie.
understand.
Okay.
I'm just asking a question.
That's right.
But because other people have spoken and she's speaking and the committee members are speaking, which I understand, but I just want to make sure that I'm clear about this.
Yeah.
So
Jackie.
in terms of protocol, at the moment, a consultant to the committee as well as only the committee members can speak.
That's correct.
Thank
It's
Jackie-
only for the purpose of we have a big agenda to get through.
Eileen is also an invited guest. She's not a consultant to the committee.
She's not?
No, she's an invited guest who's presenting to us today.
Patrick, I just want to clarify. So you're an invited guest and your committee members are now able to speak as opposed to members of the public.
That's right.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Eileen, for that
I think
help.
though, Randy, I do think that to Jackie's point, I just wanted for Jackie, I wasn't being, argumentative. It's just she has an invited guest, but I do believe that the public should have a chance to speak before we make any formal votes. That's just my opinion. You're the chair. You can do it however you want. But generally, we don't take votes without having an opportunity for feedback because otherwise the feedback doesn't matter.
I'm asking that the public comments be held until the end of our discussions, Patrick. Because we know we've got a lot to do and we have a lot of questions to discuss. And we have Eileen here as a really great resource to us. And I think that we are not making any decisions today.
Well, you asked for a motion for the $7,900. That's my point.
Right. We are not making any decisions about what is going to happen to the property. I think we are very capable of making decisions about what kind of information that we think we need in order to take us to the next step so that we can make good decisions about the property.
Okay.
Jan, I was just looking back because I had alerted, because it had been a while since I was last in conversations with David Prickett. And I basically wanted to let him know that we were just going to move ahead with the 60. And his response to me was, and I told him why. And he said, if authorized for the 60 bedroom build, we can look at both options. It's easier to scale down. So I don't think it's going to be, a major issue.
Yeah, good. Thank you, Bruce.
All right. I would like to get a motion on whether we'd like to move forward in retaining DPC engineering to give us the information about the utilities.
We have a motion on the floor, don't we?
Yeah, I think I thought I said I'd love to have a motion to approve $7,900 for DPC engineering to move ahead with to fulfill the preliminary proposal that David has provided to us.
Okay, do we have a second?
Wait, I thought that we were going to take public comments before we do that. Am I incorrect?
This decision is for us to be able to move forward and gather information. And I think that is not something that involves public comment, in my opinion, because this is what the trust is charged to do, is to gather the information to make decisions. We've heard a lot from the community, and I hope we'll hear a lot more. But right now, we need to develop a plan to move forward and to gather the information that we need to make the basic decisions about what to do on the property. So
right now, we're only asking for approval to spend some money to have an engineer give us information so that we can know whether we move ahead with a plan or not.
right. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second. All those in favor? Jan?
Hi, Jan.
Liz? It's you.
Hi, Liz.
Okay. Patrick?
Hi, Patrick.
Hi, Bruce.
Irene?
Hi, Mark.
I'm Kim.
Okay, thank you. All right. Next, I'd like to just update a couple of things that we did this summer to gather information in addition to speaking to Eileen. And Bruce, I think you also, I'm going to turn to you again because you spoke to Laura Schufeld. And if you could update, I spoke with her also, but I think you spoke with her most recently. So if you could update on sort of what's available through Laura.
She basically said that she would be, that she and her organization would be happy to participate in and help us in any way they can as a consultant. But she was unable, unfortunately, to be able to be present this afternoon. She had a conflict, and her colleague that she had initially recommended was out of town at a meeting, and so neither of them were able to be here, but she basically said that they would be more than happy to participate with us and help us figure out exactly how to proceed with both the development of our part of the parcel as well as anything else we choose to do to create more affordable housing in the town.
Remind me what her company does.
I'm sorry?
Just remind me what they do, what her company does.
It's a mass housing
Partnership.
Mass housing
In
partnership.
fact, Eileen, can you give us a quick sketch on what mass housing does?
Are we talking about mass housing or mass housing partnership? Sorry.
Mass housing partnership. Sorry, I know there's so many. Mass housing partnership, Laura and Shelley.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So, well, they do a lot of different things, but I think the thing they do offer some consulting services for a program that they call the Commonwealth Builder Program, like to help people get home ownership started. I guess Stockbridge is not able to access that program. So I know that's kind of the focus of the consultants, but they have a lot of experience in trying to do home ownership development. So I guess they kind of bring parties together. They know the connections in Massachusetts. They typically bring in a development consultant. They're more like a convener than the experts, I guess, beyond their program.
Although she had indicated to me that she thought that there were more grants available for rental than ownership.
Oh, absolutely, there are.
Is there anything in the new bill on home ownership?
Yes. Well, there's an expansion of the Commonwealth Builder, more money for that. But again, they did not expand it beyond the gateway cities. There is a home ownership tax credit that we don't exactly know what that will look like. That has some potential. Another thing, because Stockbridge is such a low-income community, the affordable housing program could be through the Federal Home Loan Bank of Boston, could be a potential. It's highly competitive, but I think we might, be able to put I looked at their scoring. It's all about the scoring with that. It's literally, how many points did you score? You get funded, you don't. That's a possibility. So there's some stuff out there. It's certainly not the amounts that are on the rental side. It just isn't.
So we did, you had a chance to talk with her. She is another person that we can turn to as we develop this, in addition to Eileen. But I sent out a series.
She'll be following up with me later this week, because she said after you have your meeting, we can follow up.
Okay, good. Thank you. Thank you, Bruce. Bruce is also, I didn't thank Bruce for organizing this meeting. Thank you very much for the endless telephone calls that are required to get people together. All right. I'd like to use this questionnaire that I sent out just as a structure, and to see if we can come to see if we even have any consensus about various directions that we should explore. The first question is, what type of housing product is needed in Stockbridge? And we certainly have a lot of that information in the housing production plan, Jan. And I just listed, we've talked about capital A affordable, which is housing that's available to people of certain income levels. We have affordable housing in general, what we call small A affordable housing. We have workforce housing, which I know Eileen is not does not look favorably on that terminology. Single family and multifamily, a mix of different types of housing. And the big question is, do we need, for this project, what is appropriate, sale or rental, or both? So I'd like to open the discussion with that question. And I'd like to see if we can come to some sort of, at least to see if we have any unanimity of our thinking, or whether we're still quite spread out in what we'd like to do. Who would like to start? Michaela has to leave, so.
Ask a question. Is that something I could make copies of for the people in the audience?
Sure. By all means, that would be nice. Thank you. Michaela, I know you have to leave fairly shortly, so I'd love to know your thoughts.
I mean, it's a complex answer, I think. I'm interested, and Eileen, I'd be interested in your thoughts on this, just seeing more of the scope of things, but I'm interested in this idea of something that is for sale with another unit inside that can be rented. Is that a model that has been out there and has had some success at all?
Are you talking about like a mother-in-law apartment within a for sale building?
Yeah.
A ownership building?
Yeah.
Sorry, that's probably not the politically correct term
Yeah.
for whatever, but you all know.
I mean,
I'm not actually
either.
sure I know what it is right now, the right term. Yes, I mean, it can be sort of an ADU term, but
Right.
I haven't seen a development that has affordability restrictions do that. It's a little bit challenging to think about how the funding and the grants might work. So I guess I'm not the best person to answer that particular question. It's pretty specific model, and I'd have to sort of vet it through the grants and funding opportunities available, to be honest. But I can make a note to look at it. I
think that there's just something interesting about that idea, and I've heard it tossed around a little bit, only because there's a sense of, I mean, there is a sense of ownership involved. There's a sense of like, I will be living in this space. This other space is not able to be used as a short-term vacation rental. This other space has to be a long-term lease, but because it's my space, I want to care for it. I want to keep it up, right? So there's something about that I think is interesting. And kind of kills two birds with one stone a little bit, which interests me.
Yeah, I think we can have a separate conversation about that. And off the top of my head, I see some pros and cons, but
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. That's sort of where my head went. I know everyone wants single family and that's the goal for a lot of people. I think we'd have to look at cost. I think the cost of single family development is going to be significantly higher than like 2-family dwellings. And to be honest with you, like, I mean, I do feel like we're missing that middle in Stockbridge. I do feel like we're missing, I mean, if we want to, workforce housing is a term, but I do feel like we're kind of missing that reasonable middle of the road that does bring, families in. And so that interests me. I think I think what we define as that is like, has changed a lot. And I think, so that's of interest to me.
So I think this model of having a home with income certainly ought to be very appealing if we can build it, if we could build it.
It almost sounds like a 2-family house with the second unit being smaller and the owner buying the house and then renting out the smaller unit. So you end up with a rental unit and an owner unit.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe that rental income helps the owner
Mm-hmm.
make the purchase.
Mhm.
Is that what you
Yeah.
think about? Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting. It's an interesting idea.
But could we start with the sort of the response about rental versus home ownership? It's pretty clear in the discussions that we've had in the past that the whole national affordable housing program was set up to do rental. And because that's where the tax credits are, and that's the big source, and correct me, Eileen, if I'm wrong, but that's the big source of funding to be able to build affordable housing today. And rental, I personally, as a developer, if I were looking at this land to develop as a market product, this is a single family residential neighborhood with really, I don't think little, if any, rental, certainly not any multifamily rental housing in the general, I would say within the circle down to you from
Yeah.
Glendale Middle around to
Yeah, it's all
your
single
street.
family homes, mostly owner occupied, from what I can tell.
So it seems like that you have to look at the neighborhood, what's there right now, in trying to determine what's appropriate to add. But I don't know, Jan, I know you have some thoughts.
Agree with you in terms of the single family houses, kind of rather than multifamily houses. And I think it would be, I don't know whether it's even possible to envision having single family homes, some of which might be rental and some of which might be home ownership. And of course, the challenge in that, I'm sure, is going to be the economics of it and how to, as you mentioned, a lot of the funding comes for rental properties. But I think in that neighborhood, if we could do something with home ownership, it would be more in keeping with the neighborhood. And there may be a way to structure it economically so that you could have a mix of, and I'm not talking apartments for the rentals, I'm talking like townhouses or simple, single family homes. So that's kind of the way I would lean on that.
Okay. Liz, I know you, a real estate broker, so you know the community very well. Can we have your thoughts?
I agree that it's a single family neighborhood. I'd like to see it stay that way. We're not trying to change the character of the neighborhood. I mean, that's, I think, the last thing we want to do. I am concerned about where the money comes from. You know, how are we going to make this work? And I think we don't have enough information yet. And I think, Eileen, I'm very happy to have you here because you have more of an understanding of it. And I don't see building 60. I mean, that number just frightened me, by the way. Building 60 units there. I think that
Bedrooms.
bedrooms rather. It just seemed rather large, especially for that neighborhood. So I know that's probably a concern of people sitting in the audience, and I just wanted to voice that I don't think our goal.
I think one thing I would throw in for you to think about is that the difference between home ownership and rental, Jan, as you were saying, like, yeah, I can't imagine doing rental if it wasn't like townhouses, maybe two together, little space, two together, something like that. But it's about, you're going to have the density, which is different than the rest of the community, right? So whether it's home ownership or rental, you will have the density, you will have, basically a access road that you're building that whatever number of, units, whether they're rental or home ownership, people are going to be coming and going from, right? So, because I think when we sort of use the term single family, you're already letting go of that. Just to be blunt about it, right? So if the question then I guess becomes home ownership versus rental, what are you saying behind that? When you're saying, well, I'd rather have home ownership, is it because the income levels are higher and, people are more invested? Or I guess I just want to differentiate that the argument that the community needs home ownership or single family home ownership, that's already going to be something that's going to change with this type of development. And I'm not, advocating for rental. I mean, I do think there's a need for home ownership there across the Berkshires. Certainly affordable home ownership. So I'm not saying that we need to do both. I just wanted to point that out, that it's already going to feel different because of the density.
Is that because it's a cul-de-sac, essentially?
Yeah, well, and I mean, I know there's 34 acres, but it's basically going to feel like whatever that 7-8 acres that's developable. That's not, a single family home to 5 or 10 acres, like much of the rest of Stockbridge is. Just that, yeah. And they would be built, I assume, I think you guys talked about sort of a pod model, right? So you'd have 4 homes very close together, or some number of homes very close together. So it's going to be its own community to some degree, which is great. I mean, I think it's important to create community. Too many of us live alone, right? 1/3 of Americans live alone in a house. So that's, it'd be nice. So I guess I don't know if you absolutely have to answer the home ownership versus rental question now. I think you should more just say you're all accepting the idea that you're creating a community here, and there's going to be a little more density, whether it's there'll be some sort of cul-de-sac-y type thing, right? There'll be one road that everybody's coming into. And what then do we want that to look like? What kinds of things, like Rennie, your question about, energy efficiency and style. And so maybe thinking through the lens of what do you want the community to look like? That might be helpful to then frame out what's possible. I mean, you're all right. Homeownership is harder, but it doesn't mean it's impossible. And there's a group of committed people in a community that's committed. I mean, it may take time, but again, you know, the brick walls might be a little higher and a little harder scale, but I don't think we're needing to give up on either, you know, homeownership or rental. So maybe if you just frame what you want around these things about those other things, right? You know, what do you want that community to look like? Whether it's the people there or, you know, do we want, you know, energy efficiency and gardens? Do we want to have, if nobody wants a double barrel corridor anywhere, I can, you know, we can be clear about that. But some of those things, maybe outlining some of that might be a helpful information for a developer to start to understand, right?
Good. Thank you, Eileen. Patrick? Patrick, are you there? Patrick, have you checked out?
Might be muted.
I'm here. I'm here.
Yeah, there was a mute button.
Oh, there he comes. Okay, good. Can we get some of your thoughts, Patrick?
Yeah, I would just remind everyone that we are, I think, according to the 2022 document, it was Stockbridge and North Adams were the only two communities that reached this 10% threshold. So let's first recognize that that the fact that the town overwhelmingly supported the creation of a housing trust and the residential inclusionary bylaw, which is a vehicle for funding, and the sorts of strategies around CPC funding, for example, has been really remarkable in terms of the narrative of NIMBY and whatever. I think that the town has significantly supported, even though there was no legal mandate for us to do so, the idea of doing housing. So that's the one point. I think that a second point I would make is personally, I would rather see fewer units that were home ownership than more units that are rental. I think that my sense for Stockbridge is that the pressures that we're under are that the long-term anchor of a community isn't is under siege. We always had something around 60% of primary homeowners, and now we're at around 30 or 35%. And then I would just point out that the fabric of the community depends on those long-term residents. And I think there's more stability if in a 15-year deed restricted, home that someone owns, there's just more stability in the community because their upside doesn't kick in until if they had toddlers when they bought it, then those kids are graduating from high school before they can flip it. And I think that there's something to be said for the benefits in a community like Stockbridge where we weren't mandated to do any of this, and yet we did it anyway. I think that it's not our job to solve the entire county's problems. It is. I think we should be part of the solution, but I think that on balance for Stockbridge, home ownership is something that is going to, kind of keep us healthy. Where we've seen a really significant erosion and continue to see an erosion in home ownership for locals.
So Patrick, I'm a little confused. In the beginning, you said, I think you're saying you support home ownership because it gives our community more stability. Is that fair?
Yeah.
Okay.
I do think it's just important to take into consideration, though, that whatever we build needs to actually be affordable to people. And so we need to make sure that there are gateways to home ownership, like Eileen was mentioning, before we spend tons of time and grant money and stuff to build something that we can't find people for.
Yeah, no, I think that that's a great point. And certainly a $25,000 down payment assistance that didn't work in Great Barrington or in Lenox for specifically the reason you're talking about. There wasn't enough to fund the Delta. It worked in Lennoxdale because the houses were relatively inexpensive. It could work in North Adams. So we're going to have to ensure that we have revenue streams that make a significant dent in what our cost to build the housing would be versus what the mortgage someone can afford is. And my guess is back of the napkin. That's 125 grand per unit. I think that we have a real shot at pulling that off. I think the residential inclusionary bylaw, we know that both 37 Arrow Laken and Elm Court will bring proposals back that will include an affordable housing component in the next few months. I think that I've been really buoyed by some of the talk that Chad Smith at Tanglewood, the new CEO of Tanglewood, and a guy named Tyler Rand, who is the chief of staff, have articulated around their renewed focus on being a catalyst for positive change in the Berkshires around some of the housing stressors. And I think what you'll see is one of the biggest areas that they'll focus on is in alleviating the rental crisis that comes about because they rent so many units for 2 or 3 months. So it's not technically short term, but it keeps stock from being available in these communities for year-round renters. And I think that they're going to address that. In fact, I'm certain of it. I've had conversations with them. So, there's a lot of things going on that are kind of beyond us that may have a positive impact specifically on Lenox and Stockbridge. And I would just encourage us. I agree with Eileen. I don't think we need to decide yet, because if the money doesn't come through from the residential inclusionary bylaw, then we may not have many options in terms of funding. And we're not going to know that until after the negotiation with the select board is done.
Thank you. We're going to lose Mikhail. That's all right. I understand. Thank you for coming, making the effort to be here. But I think, Eileen, the discussion, it's very, very helpful to see where people are, but let's go around and get this question about how for sale versus rental. While it's not something we're going to resolve today, it's helpful because, in my opinion, the next thing that we need to do is decide what next step or what next piece of information do we need to be able to fashion a request for a proposal. So, Bruce, you want to put in your?
Sure. My personal feeling is not dissimilar to Patrick's in the sense that I think if we pursue affordable home ownership, we basically create people that are more committed to the community and will have more staying power within the community. So that there won't be a revolving door of the property that they're in, that they might be renting for some period of time. If there were a way for rental towards homeownership, I think that's something that we should think about. Sort of the way people do things on a lease to buy. And if we, can get people in the door through a rental program, with some opportunity for that rental program to basically lead to home ownership, sometime not too far down the road, I think that's an option. But I think that ultimately we should do that. I mean, if we're talking about the Glendale property, Glendale Road Middle Road property, basically whatever we do there, we're almost creating a sort of a mini community within the community of Stockbridge. Because if we put 5, 10, 15, 20 homes there, there's going to be a little enclave. There'll probably be a common road to get into the area. People will really get to know their neighbors because they'll be within the same area. And I think that really supports a real sense of community and commitment to Stockbridge and to the people in Stockbridge and to the community at large. But I think that we should be heading towards affordable home ownership as the ultimate goal, the ultimate target. And if there's a process where we can do a rent to own that we can put in place that might get us there more expeditiously and give people and lower income people, young families that want to come into the area, an opportunity to get in at the ground floor, then I think that's what we should do.
Eileen, do you have experience with rent to own strategies?
Yeah, it's not, it's pretty challenging to do. You have to be able to capitalize it, which, you know, you're not, you can't use resources on the rental side, you know, that where we talked about, there's lots of grants and stuff. You can't use that, right? Because there's, affordability restrictions and, you know, long-term commitments to others. So you'd have to be able to capitalize it essentially in the same way that you're capitalizing a market rate unit, right? So, you know, and so that's the problem in the Berkshires. You can't, and you'd end up charging a very high rent, especially with interest rates where they are right now, right? To cover the cost of that unit, right? To build it. So I don't, I mean, we can look at it some more, but my inclination is that would be pretty challenging to do.
Okay, thank you. That's a shame.
Mark?
All right. Well, I think this is a dilemma we've been wrestling with for a long time. What we hear is that in the rental area, there's more money available from the government. The government is not that interested in helping people build equity. They want to get people into housing. And so the money flows to rental housing. Rental housing also is easier for people to get into in the sense that they don't have to have a big down payment. They might have to have the first and last month or a damage deposit, whatever, but relatively smaller money to get into a place. Rental places, though, have to be managed. And then you've got a whole other layer of something that's got to be continuous. And somebody has to do that work and it has to be paid for. A couple of us had a chance to talk to two of the executives from Penrose who are developing the Brushwood property. I don't know if you're familiar with that. It's on Route 7 in Lenox near the Courtyard Marriott. Back up not far from that Marriott, there's 65 units of housing that are going to go in there. They're working on it now by this Penrose company, which has a lot of experience. But and it's affordable. They're going to have there's 65 units, 13 buildings, 3-story buildings, 5 units in each building, something way out of scale with anything in Stockbridge, and certainly not compatible with the neighborhood that we're referencing here. But 50 of the 65 units will be people with pretty modest incomes, 30 to 60% of the area median. And 15 of the units would be for people up to 120% of the area median, which gets up over 100,000, depending on how many family members there are. But one thing they told us was the reason they like to do about 60 units is that generates the revenue required to have a full-time manager on site. That if you have fewer units, it doesn't generate enough money to hire a skilled manager for the property. So that's a problem right there. So I think the rental side, while there's money available and there's easier access for people to get in, has other complications and a density that just doesn't seem right. On the other hand, the single family homes on the street of the folks who are here with us today are not affordable to people of modest means now. We certainly have people in town who couldn't afford to buy the house they're living in right now. And so the idea of building single family homes back there for home ownership seems unrealistic. You're talking $500,000 or more. Nobody's building houses for less than that. For 400 to 450, maybe. I don't even know how they do it. What might be possible, I did a little work today looking up modular 2-family homes that have a similar look to the neighborhood. There's a company up in New Hampshire that's called New England Homes, and they build them up there in a factory. And they look pretty good, and they're duplexes. And if you had 6 or 8 of those back there, so you could have 12 to 16
This around us.
families.
These are-
That might be a possibility, and as a 2-family, it might be more affordable than a single. But you'd still probably have to find some subsidy money to help people with down payments or reduce the cost of the building, the way Habitat does, where they may sell a house to somebody that they fixed up and they can reduce the price by $100,000 because of money they've been able to raise to do it. So I think it's a real dilemma. I just think that the rental requires a density that's not appropriate for that site. Single-family homes, to me, are out of the question for if you want to try to do affordable housing. And maybe a modular duplex arrangement with a limited number of them, 6 or 8 of these buildings times 2 for the number of households, might be something that's workable up there. So that's where those are some of the thoughts I'm having and wrestling with at this stage.
Eileen, could you speak a little bit? I know you were working on a couple of projects and you're getting costs in that to build a 1,000 to 1,200 square foot single family house. I think we were thinking that you could do that for 400,000. Are those the kinds of numbers that you're seeing right now?
No, unfortunately, higher. So I did actually, get one, a quote from another project. It's actually in Pittsfield. These are early estimates. I'm not sure. I'm actually convinced that this is even doable. But so they essentially, no acquisition costs, very limited site costs, and it's coming in at 499. And I'm looking at the pro forma as we were talking here, and I see several line items that I think are low. I guess what I think it could be potentially 500 if we looked at, and I don't think you're wrong. I'm sorry, I don't know the name of the person who just spoke, but the modular home model might be a way to go. There are some products I've looked at, the New England homes. There are some products that can be quite lovely. Modular homes are not, the scary thing we all think they were from 20 years ago. So that could be helpful, but my gut is 500 to 600. It really is with this site and some of the things that we're going to need to do. And I'm not even including the town's infrastructure work. I'm talking about from the road in, right? We're going to have to build a road. We're going to have to bring in all that water, sewer to the whatever cul-de-sac, but that whole thing. Just doing that, and clearing and leveling and doing all that stuff, I think it's going to make it on the higher end of that. So if they're coming in at around 5 and they don't have carrying costs or other things that I think are necessary, I think it could be upwards of 6, unfortunately.
There's no question, I think, to me, single family homes are the most appropriate for, that is compatible with what's there. And there's no question that there's going to be a gap between whatever we can price them at and what they actually cost.
Yeah.
Including the utilities and whatever else comes along. And there's going to be problems. So I think, Patrick, you were saying you thought that gap might be $125,000. My sense is it's probably $200,000 to $300,000 that we would have to fundraise for each structure to be able to sell it and at a price that the market could bear. Maybe. Go ahead.
I look at, we're able to, if it takes us 5 years to build 15 units rather than 30 that are rentals, so we spend 5 years building them. That's one way to look at it. I think that I think we should also recognize that this parcel is not our entire housing strategy. It's what works best, I think, in that neighborhood. But we've had ongoing conversations with Heaton Court about adding rental units at Heaton Court in the neighborhood of 10 to 15, maybe some markets, so locals who could afford it could stay in their hometown. We've looked at the Levan property as an example of other places we could develop other types of housing, other styles of housing. So I don't think that we should view this one property as indicative of it's all one or all the other. I think we definitely have a affordability issue, in terms of not just affordable housing, in terms of many other things. So, I think that I think the context of the question is, what should we do with this one parcel? Not what should we do as a strategy for the housing trust?
I think that's at least that's why I had hoped our conversation would focus on. We can't take on the world. We've got a piece of property. We need to make some decisions about what's best for that piece of property. So one of the thoughts, in addition to having Eileen and hopefully Laura as resources for us, I think that it's appropriate in terms of making the decision about what's really appropriate for the land, for us to think about retaining a planning group to give us a proposal. We have a proposal from an engineering point of view that says 76 units could be put, multifamily units. And I think we all feel that was excessive and not the right direction to go. But I would like to see what a really good high standard planner, and I think you mentioned someone you used, Eileen, is it Baxter?
Judy Barrett or Barrett Consulting, they're called.
Right, that you've used before.
Mhm.
Can you
Yeah.
can you give me that name again?
Barrett, Barrett. I think they're just called Barrett Consulting. It's Judy, Judi.
Thank you.
I mean, that's just one. I also shared with Randy a whole, like a directory of where you can connect and, reach out to at least a few different ones who could potentially, help with that sort of planning process. They can help with the 40B process. They can create kind of a timeline for you. Okay, here's the, what we need to do next. Here's the decision point. But I think what's important to get a sense of, I think it was important to have that conversation. And I mean, just as being the sort of, guest here, you want to do home ownership, and that's what it sounds like. That's what makes sense there. So that's, I think you kind of move ahead expecting to do that. You also, I mean, there is a project that I'm, helping kind of behind the scenes with in Pittsfield that is a larger homeownership project, and sort of the backup plan is to convert it to rental if we can't make it happen. So it does, you don't necessarily have to make that call right now, but I think there are certain things, it's good to know that's what you're thinking. And I think having a planning person come in and help you sort of lay out, where do we want to go with this? What's our timeline? So the first steps are probably the 40B process, getting the, understanding that the town can have the resources to get the money from MassWorks. Are they eligible? Right? Because right there, right, if that number is $3 million, just guessing, could be $3 million, right, to bring that infrastructure down the road. That's, figuring that out is a first thing, right? Because it's not really a viable site without that, right? So those are the kinds of things I think a planning person could help you work through that process. And also bring in, for the 40B and such, like the community conversation around it that I know you've been doing some of, right? And then create that, what is this community? What do we want for this community? That's one of the things the Barrett Group did for us. they did a study of what a housing resource center day shelter could look like. We interviewed people experiencing homelessness. We interviewed, business owners, faith community, all kinds of people. And they, put together this kind of lovely 40-page report that helped us figure out what kind of model we wanted to have for this resource center that we're building. So they could, they could help with that kind of stuff too.
All right. This has been very, very useful. Could we talk for a minute about what are appropriate next steps? I think that Eileen's recommended we consider doing a request for a proposal from a couple of planning groups and see what that would cost and what they might do to help us. Barrett is one name. We're blessed in this state to have some of the most talented designers in the country. So I think easily within the state, we could find some very, very talented people to give us some advice. Because, I mean, we as a trust are not developers. Patrick, you want to speak?
I actually have a handful of questions for Eileen. Is now a good time to ask them?
Sure.
Okay. I have some questions on the 2022 housing vision for the Berkshires, and then separately but together, what's changed with the Affordable Homes Act. So I guess the first question is, has anyone done kind of a market analysis of how many rental units we are short in the county?
So the 2022 analysis, most of that data, I think you know this, Patrick, was pre-COVID or so it was getting published like as I was walking through the door. I mean, it did actually take a year to get out the door, but I think the data had already been there in 2020. So I'm not sure, it's entirely helpful. We are in the process of doing a study for Berkshire County, Franklin, Hampden, and Hampshire County. You may be familiar with the Western Mass Housing Coalition, did it for the 3 counties.
Yep.
So that is being updated and will be available in the spring for including Berkshire County. So Brad Gordon and I have been working with them to, so that's the Donahue Institute. They are great, very well respected. So that will be updated for the Berkshires. So
what's your guess of how many units we're short? Do you have one?
I don't want to do that. A lot.
All right. Okay, so that was my first question. My second question is, in the vision for housing, vision for the Berkshires, you guys basically stated that that we're going to need to look at the affordability issue around, seasonal resident tax levels. Basically, in some ways, I don't want to put words in the mouth of the authors, but it's pretty clear that evaluating things like the residential exemption, which was just raised from 35 to 50%, was something that you addressed a need for in this proposal, in this vision. It strikes me that affordability is really at the heart of our problem. We're not going to be able to build enough subsidized units to fix our problems. And I was buoyed by the fact that you guys seem to agree with that. Do you think that's a fair categorization or estimation of the document?
I guess what I'm going to do is I'm going to answer based on my experience of being here for 3 years, because I was not at all involved in those conversations, Patrick. I literally was doing like editing at the very end. So, when I read it, like you read it, kind of raw, I think there was, a lot of detail in there about recommendations that were very specific. But overall, I would say, that many of us in the housing industry feel very strongly that affordability is needs to be elevated in the way that availability has been elevated. There's a sense in the world that we can build our way out of this challenge. And I think anybody who's in the industry would argue that that's one tool in the toolbox and maybe not even the most important.
Now,
So,
so it seems like when you look at the at the bill, it does seem like that there's some carrots and a little bit of sticks that come with the seasonal communities designation. A town like Stockbridge will be designated a seasonal community because more than 40% of our homes are owned by seasonal residents. Other towns can pursue the seasonal designation by going to Ed Augustus. Are you guys going to be recommending they do that? Or, because it seems like there's a lot of good things around, for example, lot size and, tiny homes and municipal housing strategies.
I mean, we wanted the legislature to put the Berkshires all in the same way that, the Cape is all in. We couldn't get that. We worked quite hard to try.
But you kind of got it. You kind of got it because anybody can now apply.
Well, yes, no, it was all in assumed, and if you want to access it, you can. Yes, anyone can apply. When I say the devil's in the details on that one, it's a little unclear how the administration's going to interpret some of those, right? So 40% is one thing, but I mean, there are other
there's other
ways to get there. I don't know if they're going to weigh them, or you have to have all of them or one of them. I would venture to guess that Stockbridge would make it, but I know that when I've talked to Tom from regional planning, I'm not sure that he thinks Stockbridge makes it based on his analysis. So I think we can go down a rabbit hole with this, but I certainly think that there are potential benefits here that, if there's any way for any town in the Berkshires to get into the program, I think it's likely a good idea.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no money. It's in the way we think about gateway cities, for example, Commonwealth Builder, right? Commonwealth Builder, the program that would be really wonderful for affordable home ownership, is only available to the gateway cities. Well, there was, battles about who was going to be a gateway city when they established.
Yeah. But in the case
later, there's money attached to it. So if we can get in,
if you look at line 1315 in the bill, it says that he shall designate any community with 40% or more. He doesn't have any flexibility there.
Yeah.
So I think that that's something to look at. Now, along those lines, though, there is some concern that many of us have around short-term rentals and what happens to the value of a parcel if you allow 2 short-term rentals on one parcel. The calendar is not favorable to us because they're going to promulgate the regulations you were just talking about by February. But if town meeting passes a new bylaw, it won't get passed till May. And then it takes the Attorney General 4 to 6 months to approve the bylaw if they approve it. So you're going to have kind of a Wild West period between February and, let's say, December, where the ADU by right, for example, could for folks who want to be in the short-term rental business, boy, I would get those permits in quickly to try to take care of the window, because once someone has applied, they lock in the zoning that was in place at the time.
Yeah.
So I think that advocating for folks to really consider, for example, a special town meeting to get bylaws in place in all these towns is really critical, because if it's so expensive to build a unit, and if we're losing units because all of a sudden now it's financially so lucrative to now do 2 units on one property, that's something that maybe we need to look at. I think that the other thing I think we maybe want to advocate a little more strongly for is the relationship between affordable housing and foundation enrollment at the schools. It's my opinion, and I'm not stating this as a select board member, it's just as my opinion as a person, is that towns like Lennox is in a regional district, but Great Barrington, for example, have been penalized because they figured it out sooner than their regional partners in the school districts. And right in the bill, it encourages regional trusts and helping, Stockbridge is here. We created a trust. We want to build it. But, you can probably tell listening to us that we're just figuring this out now, unlike our neighbor to the south who's been doing it for 25 years. And helping to figure out ways to reduce the pressure on school budgets, which by far is the #1 municipal impact on the budget. When we embrace housing is really critical to getting these kinds of things. I don't want to have to choose between a new high school building housing or fixing Houstonic waterworks, and there's just not enough money to pay for it all in terms of the tax base. And so I think that the question of regional trust is also something that we really want to start to encourage. Anyway,
Yeah.
Are you saying regional affordable housing trusts, like merging our trusts in the towns?
I think that we need to avail ourselves of the expertise. There's really two ways you could do it. One would be a change in a regional agreement where, for example, students who live in affordable units aren't counted toward foundation enrollment. That would probably mostly fix the problem. It would it would eliminate any disincentive to build housing. Because frankly, right now, I mean, the reason why Great Barrington's rate is $17 and ours is $7, the tax rate, isn't because we're great managers and they're not. It's because of their share of the school budget. I mean, these are hard questions for the towns that we're going to have to take a look at. The other way to do it, of course, is if we had a regional trust, you start building it outside the town's borders, but that may be more problematic because it may not allow you to, choose the best site possible to build the housing.
All right. And around we go. What is the 2022 vision? Is that something your group did, Eileen?
No, it was led by regional planning, kind of took the lead on the data. It's a document that was essentially kind of a housing study data dive, along with bringing together a bunch of practitioners to describe what it's called the Housing a Vision for the Berkshires. But I can share, I mean, my name is on it because I was, the CEO when it got published, but I think Elton's my predecessor is on it as well. I mean, it was a good document, but it did run into the timing of the world changed a lot between the day it happened.
It's Eileen, it's a great document. I do have one suggestion just as we go forward. There's going to be a lot of stresses on local control. You look at solar siting, you look at many of the things that we're going to need to do that basically make it reduce the impact of local boards on the decision-making process in the state. And I think that that with that reality, my suggestion would be not to go so heavily into they're volunteers and not professionals. I mean, it's kind of it's true at a certain level. None of the people you're talking to right now or have any kind of professional experience like you do. But at the same token, it kind of politically, it doesn't maybe resonate when people kind of feel like they're, I have heard from a lot of towns in South County that there's a little bit of resentment toward sort of being trivialized a little bit, in terms of decision making.
All right. We have limited time left and I want to let our neighbors speak. So I'd like to suggest as a next step that I'd like to pick a next meeting that everybody can come to in person in a week, 10 days, 2 weeks, somewhere in the end of the month, that we could all come with suggested planning people and focus that meeting on a discussion about getting some planning help so that we could move forward with resolving some of the discussions that we've had today. Would that be acceptable? group?
What are you looking at?
I've just opened up
I
the
don't know.
calendar.
The earliest I can do it is the 27th.
Okay, Mark won't be back till the 22nd, what, 7th? What day of the week is that?
So, well, it's a Friday.
It's a Friday. Jan? Do people mind meeting on Fridays? Are you still going to be here?
I'll be here. Yeah, but there's some holidays coming up, Jewish
Yeah.
holidays coming up.
Is the Friday a meeting day?
It's okay.
Is it a
They're in
holiday?
October.
I could do the 26th, actually. I could-
Okay, Mark just said he could do the 26th. Liz?
Does she have planning that day?
I don't know. That's a Thursday. Can you do it?
Not planning, well, I mean, it's not planning board, but
What can you do, Patrick?
I'm looking, but it sounds like, you know, we've got a recommendation from Eileen on Bear Consulting. I think it's that makes a lot of sense to me. I mean, you know,
Well, I think you want to look, because I think you want to come back with a few recommendations, and I can look as well. And as I mentioned, I
No,
said,
I agree, Patrick, that certainly they're they're a very good one to consider, but I'd like to at least have a discussion and have at least several that we can send requests for proposals to.
it's just, I mean, they're great. I just don't know they can meet all of your needs. There might be somebody better who can meet them. That's
okay.
what I want to look at.
And I think though that Randy, along those lines, you know, when we talk about an hourly rate for the legal work, we're going to need this amount, the 7,900 for the sewer plan. We may want to actually come up with a budget for the housing trust for the next year. I think that might actually be something that should run concurrent with this discussion on who to hire.
Okay. By all means, we don't know what a plan, do you have any sense, Eileen, what a preliminary plan, conceptual plan might cost?
Well, it could be all over the place, depending on what we're having them do. I'm willing to help you, you know, kind of come up with the categories of the pre-development budget, because that's really, I mean, I know it's the Stockbridge Housing Trust, but it's really those pre-development early work that you need to do where you're assessing the feasibility. That's the phase you all are in, right? The feasibility budget for the project. And we do those all the time. So I could sort of take one of those and send it to you, sort of adapted for this. And I will talk to my director of real estate development and get some ranges for prices on those things.
Okay, that would be huge, huge.
That would help.
I think we need some time to gather that information, but
I mean, I can do it for the 26th. That it won't be.
can you do the 26th? So Patrick, could you come on the 26th?
I can, yes.
Okay, if we make, do people like the 3 o'clock time or the 4 o'clock time?
3.
Three's good.
Okay, it looks like 3 is the winner. All right, 3 o'clock on the 26th.
Okay.
Everybody okay? Well, I'll check with Michaela and make sure that works for her.
Mm-hmm.
But terrific, 6 can come. All right, Jackie, the floor belongs to you guys.
I think Ron.
Yeah, I unfortunately have to leave, but one concern that really hasn't been talked about yet is sort of this New England tradition of repurposing properties.
Okay,
We have properties in the town of Stockbridge, and I haven't heard anyone talk about the properties we have in town that could be for that purpose. One of the points could be Route 7 North, the Presner property, which is just north of Marie and Keith Rafferty's property. Now that's in the land court now. The town of Stockbridge has it, and
is that the gas station? Excuse me.
No, that's further up. It's almost into Lee.
Yeah.
yeah, it's just before Highland Farm on the right. Property's been vacant for, I would say, at least 30 years.
Yeah. You know what's going on up there? Why?
The only thing I know that the town has that property in land court. You know, I talked to Mike Canales about it, and
Yeah.
we all know the land court's take time, but that property, and also the gas station is in the land court also.
Yeah.
But looking at the gas station, because of the other issues with that, that's not what I wanted to talk to people about it today. But that's one property up there that could certainly be thought of as transformed into some kind of affordable housing. We also have.
Excuse me, Don, do you know how many acres are up there? There's that one house there, but
I really don't. I
Okay.
should have talked to Keith.
Oh, that's all right.
But
Could-
anyway,
Could you just, since I have no idea where this is or what it looks like,
Yeah.
is there some sort of identification I can write down?
It's between Rattlesnake and Highland Farm.
Yeah, it's
on Route 7.
two houses up from Keith Rafferty's house, you know.
Yeah, she probably doesn't know that.
It's the last house on Route 7 on the right-hand side before you get to the town of Lee.
Before you get to what?
Lee, the Lee
Is it a
line.
yellow?
It's the last house on the right-hand side,
Got it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a good size.
just a little ways before the pull-off.
Yeah.
Before the what house?
The little pull-off at the town line.
The pull out, there's a little,
It's just south of the town line.
Yeah.
Okay.
Off of Route 7, on Route 7.
On Route 7. Also, there's another piece of property on Shamrock Street. Rose and I were walking past that property, the former Hamlin property on Shamrock Street. The woman was out there and she wants to sell the property.
it's a single family house, right?
It's a single family house. It's unfortunately, it's a tear down because there's mold in the house. She realizes that. She was telling us that she was thinking about maybe selling it for maybe 200 or 230,000. One positive thing about that is it has town water, town sewer, which is be a wonderful thing. You have a house right there, which would be certainly something to talk about.
Is that just a single family house?
Single family.
Is somebody living in that house, Don?
People have been living that, and I would
Yeah.
say we've been like there for years. I would say probably 5, 6, 7 years.
Yeah, I never see anybody there. Somebody cuts the grass, but that's all.
Yeah.
Don,
let's-
can we just address the first point you made though? Because the town has, I say the town, Michael and I have talked extensively about the properties in tax court. And the problem is that Stockbridge properties have become so valuable that the folks who are in arrears, the heirs to these properties, by paying off the taxes, even with the fines, can make a tremendous amount of money. And we're anticipating at least some of them will do that it won't make it through the actual, possession by the town. Because, if, for example, you look at the gas station, that to return ownership to that family would cost around 60 grand, and the property's worth more than that now. So, it's one of those things where some of these, until it goes through a process and is resolved, and that can take several more years, we don't know if the heirs are going to swoop in and,
Can I just go back to who owns the house on Shamrock Street?
There was a woman and she lives in Connecticut. Her brother owned the house and she will be selling it. And sounds like a great deal to me.
Yeah,
It's a wonderful spot. And again, it has town water, town sewer. There's also in the future, I'm not sure how far away it is, but the town is thinking about doing something with the fire station. And if we relocate the fire station, there's several thoughts of what are we going to do with the Glendale Fire Station, Interlake Fire Station.
Yeah.
If that happens, those fire stations may be for sale. Town water, town sewer, and both. Another thing to look at. I think that our affordable housing needs to start looking at properties and what we have available right now. That only it only makes common sense, less expensive, and it's certainly something to look at. And we have properties available.
Yeah, I mean, those are,
And if they already have town water and town sewer, that's a big plus.
It's a big plus, and a lot of times if we have water, and again, I'm talking about single family houses, because
Right.
a lot of this town is single family houses.
Yeah.
So, I just think that,
That's great.
that's thought
Yeah.
to look forward to, move forward.
Thank you.
Kind of-
I totally agree with you. We just need the money to buy them.
Well, I mean, yeah.
Well, it's gonna be cheaper, Liz, to do that than it is.
Oh, absolutely. I agree with
But
you.
you said spending millions on water and sewer.
Yep.
Yeah.
I totally agree with you. We
Oh.
just don't have it. Every time something comes up and I go, that's it. Well, we don't have the money to buy it at the moment.
Right.
Thanks.
All right. Anyway, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Don.
Would anybody, Jackie, you would,
Yeah, I'm just trying to see, I think, really wants.
So, I'm curious, you guys had a plan that was done by an engineering firm
right.
with 70-some units. That plan told you, not in terms of acreage, but approximately a third of that parcel is buildable. So out of 34 acres, you got about 11 acres buildable. You take out, a little bit for your road, 2-acre zoning, you got 5 lots.
It's not 2-acre zoning.
What's that?
It's not 2-acre zoning when it's affordable.
It's,
But
so currently it's 2-acre zoning.
Yeah.
Okay, so, even if you put duplexes in, which is not in keeping with the character of the neighborhood, it's not. You're still looking at 10 units in there.
can I say?
Is it really financially feasible to do 10 units on there?
Well,
Given all the other costs associated with it?
yeah.
It doesn't sound like it.
The only thing about the math you're doing, which is right if we strictly go by the zoning laws, but there is a provision in the state law that allows for, it's called a friendly 40B, where a developer can come in and with the approval of the town zoning board can have more density than what the zoning might allow.
That's if the zoning board allows it.
Yes, right. And in
If
fact,
they don't allow it,
then it wouldn't happen. And I suspect, I'm on the zoning board, and I suspect my colleagues wouldn't want to jam something down the throats of the town anyway, that we'd want some consensus for it. I don't
That's
mean
not my
everybody would
read, Mark.
be, I don't mean everybody in the world would be happy with it, but I don't think we're gonna try to put something that the community's in an uproar about just because we found some legal way of doing it. That wouldn't be doing our job, my opinion here speaking. Patrick, I don't know, you have more to add to that?
Yeah, I think that that the zoning board of appeals is not a policy-making board. And it should look at the law, and 40B says that density doesn't apply. And I would be shocked if town council recommended to the zoning board of appeals to oppose an affordable housing development up there. I'm not saying we should do 72 units, everybody. I'm just saying that is what we are going to propose within the confines of the law? It absolutely is. And I think that we should be really cautious to turn boards that have a specific regulatory role into policymaking boards, political boards.
so it sounds like this is gonna be forced on the neighbors here, whether it's good for us or not.
I think that the larger question we're gonna have to grapple with is what is the minimum number of units we can build to have a financially viable development? And then it's going to be a go, no go based on the merits of that argument. It's not going to be based on arbitrarily applying local zoning, which is more restrictive when we have other options that are legal for zoning. It's going to be based on can the neighborhood support 40 units if that's what it takes for it to be viable? And that's a reasonable conversation for the community to have because it's a political decision, and I think that that's something that this is what this conversation is about. It's a political conversation.
Well, it doesn't sound like as much of a conversation as a decision. Just like the decision to not allow the audience, as you call it, I would think you would consider us part of the program as where, what do they say? The chicken is involved, but the pig is committed.
Yeah.
So it seems to me to not allow the pigs, so to speak, to be able to respond in a timely way to, many of the things that were said. I think your expert has got off the line, so we couldn't ask her our questions. Or
I didn't know she was leaving. I can get her
Well,
back.
you're saying you did know, but for whatever reason, you don't have to.
I can call and ask her to come back on.
But what I'm saying, the general attitude even of someone who's called in is that she's your expert, not for everybody. And that's what this has made me feel, and even her coming right out to say, this will definitely change the character of the neighborhood, because you'll have people coming back and forth and in and out, and then it will no longer be a neighborhood of single family houses. I mean, Patrick, unless I misheard, just said, well, it will support 40 houses, then we'll go with the 40 units. So I'm just saying, this is what this conversation has.
But we would welcome, I don't know if you,
I don't feel that you welcome. I feel that.
okay, we'll do our best.
5 minutes left or 10 minutes left, and so people that just couldn't be here to sit here for 2 hours. It just becomes clear more the real feeling of the committee.
The reason that I restricted it today is that we needed the time today to develop the consensus of the trust members so that we could develop a next step. And we have, I think, we have a meeting date on the 26th at 3:00. And the purpose of that meeting will be to discuss how we go forward with the planning. And in that discussion, you're going to be very welcome to participate in that. But today, we really needed the time for ourselves. So I apologize if you got the impression that we're excluding you. I just needed to contain the discussion to the things that we needed to do.
And who was that was just speaking? I'm sorry, on Zoom, I can't see.
Nikki.
It's Nikki.
Oh, Nikki. Hi. I think that we're going to have a whole bunch of really interesting challenges around deciding what to do here. For example, I have yet to be convinced that putting in 10 septic systems and doing our 10 houses isn't going to be a whole lot cheaper than and more of a certainty than spending millions of dollars on sewer expansion to do this. Some of the realities of what this infrastructure will cost in terms of utilities, roads, water, sewer may tie our hands in terms of the larger. It may have to be giant or really small, and I think that's going to be nothing that I certainly, as one of the 7 members, I certainly have not expressed an opinion that we should go giant. So I think that we're going to have good conversations around these issues and decide what is our best chance to build at least some housing, for example, and what model makes the most sense for preserving the long-term character of the community. And it's not just the neighborhood, but the entire community around. And I think that goes to home ownership personally.
Well, to me, it sounds like anyway, whether it's 10 houses, 5 houses, 30, 40, that you said definitely no matter what, we're going to go in there and build houses. We
don't know that for sure.
Well, according to what Patrick.
I mean, if
Patrick did not say that, be fair.
if the if the development costs come in at multiple millions of dollars between water and sewer and whatnot, we may decide that we don't have the ability to move forward with doing a development on that parcel. It may be unfortunate, but we don't know the answer to that yet. So there's been no definitive decision with respect to that. We're just trying to gather enough information so that we can make a reasonably intelligent decision about whether or not building on that parcel is doable or not. And no definitive decision or vote has been made about that. We're just in the discussion and information gathering phase.
So can I just jump?
Sure, Jackie.
Bruce, I don't think I've ever met you in person, so it's nice to see you as opposed to on Zoom. But I think you did report at some point that in order to deal with the water suppression issues, because there's not enough water in the current infrastructure.
Correct.
That would be a multi-million-dollar proposal. Am I wrong?
I don't remember the exact number. I'd have to go back and pull my notes, but it was certainly something in low seven figures. Yes.
So.
Because right now there is not adequate water to fight fire.
Yes, we know that because our neighbor's home burned down.
That's a problem. That's a serious problem.
Yeah. It's a very.
Somebody lost part of their house because of that.
It's a very, well, my neighbor here lost his house as a result of not having enough
Correct.
water, you know. So I don't know what the town or the committee, I should say committees, trust threshold is in terms of how much is too much. But I would recommend that at least some thought be given to that as we go through this process, because at the moment, when I see documents such as that which was passed around, questions for development of Morris land, the Lily Pad Village, it gives the impression that you do have something in mind with respect to what's going to happen. And
You
that
named it. You named it, it's.
You're right, we've got a name for it.
So, you know, so please, I mean, please don't think that we're not taking what you're doing quite seriously, as, you know, we will be impacted by it. So I'm trying to, I came from a place of trust originally, and I'm very happy to be here to talk. But I think that just as a rule, the way the committee is being run, and especially today, you know, I think if you don't want public input until the end, maybe you should announce that at the beginning. It also would be very helpful when people are on Zoom, because we don't know who they are. If you could ask them to identify themselves or provide their address or something, because some people did ask questions that were answered during the course of this meeting, whereas I was not allowed to ask my question. So I think it would be very helpful going forward if that could be considered. I also think that, I know the next meeting is at 3 o'clock. Some of the very people in the neighborhood, and for those on the Zoom call, you can't really see how many of us are here from the community, but we've had a consistent presence, and there are about, I guess, 8 or 9 of us here today. But the other thing I wanted to suggest was that some of the people who really wanted to be here are the very people we're trying to attract, but to the neighborhood and to Stockbridge. They couldn't be here because they're working, because the meeting's at 3 o'clock, or they have childcare needs.
Well, then let's move the meeting till 5:30. That's a good point. I would support that. You know, let's meet at 5:30 or 6 like all the other committees meet.
Don't you
Yeah.
have a meeting that night?
We select board met on the 4th. Is it the 19th we picked?
We picked
I
17.
mean, I think probably most of them have it at 3 o'clock, but.
No, 26.
Yeah, so there's no select board meeting.
Okay, good. Well, let's move it then.
Yep, so, and, you know, like the agenda itself talks about report from Randy on search for a project manager. I don't even know, was that discussed?
Pardon?
The project
agenda?
manager.
I mean, the agenda, the posting to facilitate today's meeting didn't include the Lily Pad Village.
No, it did not.
No,
Uh,
those are sort of our questions to direct our discussion.
Yes, and I think they're really helpful. for you. And certainly, I'm glad Teresa asked if we could make copies because we're also trying to understand, your whole voting process. I don't know much about the process issue associated with how much project direction does the trust want to provide. I thought the property was currently in the trust's purview. So why is this question being posed and who else would provide project direction?
Let me give you a quick answer to that.
Yeah, I mean, really, go ahead.
The issue has to do with the form of the trust and what the trust can do and not do. Because if we are not developers,
Right.
we are the people who are going to collect the information so that we can put out a request for proposal for someone. And what I particularly feel strongly about is that we will get the best quality responses to our proposal if we have clearly thought through and collected as much basic information about the property as possible. And so one of the questions when I wrote this list of questions was part of understanding how much we can do and can't do, because there are limits to how there's a line and we can't go over that line. And we need consultants. When I wrote the agenda, I used the word project manager, but what we really need is a consultant. And we've got a couple. Eileen is one possibility and we have another one. There are 3 or 4 people. And we may need a series of people because doing this, I mean, I assume, Jackie, when you were in New York, that you were involved in affordable housing for New York.
Very much so.
And, it's just a vegetable soup full of letters who can keep straight, MH and MHP and on it goes. And now we have a big bill with all this money in it and it has all new alphabet soup stuff. We're not experts in this. We need people like Eileen who know which organization does what. So I used the word project manager when I did that, but as I evolved and thought about it some more, and as the discussion went on today, I could see how valuable having someone we can turn to and say, is there money here? Is there money there? Can we? And as we have our next meeting, which will be about where we could get professional help, not to tell us what to do, but to give us the possibilities. And if we can get a really first-class planner to look at the property, we now have the engineering information and all the swamp information and all the stuff that we need for the architects and the planners to look at it and say, what is the possibility for making a really wonderful project back here?
Effectively, we'll with the help of the consultants, we'll basically develop an RFP, which will be put out on the wire, and whoever responds to it and is accepted as the entity, that will be the entity that basically then takes the RFP and directs the plan and the housing plan that that's within the RFP. Once that happens, the trust only has limited amount of ability to say to the developer or whoever it is that basically gets that proposal, who wins that bid. There's only so much the trust can say that you need to do this, this, and this. We have to turn it over to them and then it's in their hands. And I think that was the reason that Rani put in there how much involvement the trust wants to have or can have in terms of seeing the plan to fruition.
And the piece associated with fire suppression.
The what?
The infrastructure piece associated with fire suppression that, based on, if I'm recalling properly, your description, which talked about having to go all the way over to 183 and possibly to Route 183 possibly all the way down to Brooklyn, sorry, I'm thinking about Brooklyn, Berkshire Botanical Garden. Who's doing that piece? Because without the fire suppression infrastructure, I would think this would be a very impossible project. So what are your plans for that piece? And my understanding in terms of the 40B process is that you can't ask a developer to pay for off-site improvements. So that's going to be something that some entity other than a potential developer would be paying for. So who's working on that piece as you do your due diligence?
We haven't started yet, so.
So you've already, anyway, there's been money spent already.
Right.
And that is a critical component of any development, and you haven't thought.
Remember, yet, I use the word yet. We got a lot to
Well,
do.
if we're backing into cost, how can you even envision moving this forward without having that critical piece?
We don't. We know we have to do that, Jackie.
Okay, so I had just a couple of other questions. I know everybody's kind of sleeping, we're all tired. But I do want to just acknowledge my neighbors and, thank everybody for their patience. Donnie sort of spoke to this, but we know that the former Morris property, I know it's identified as Morris property on your notes, Randy, is now town property.
Right.
We know that that property consists of woodlands and wetlands. It's in an R1 district, and that it will not currently meet zoning requirements for a single-family home, let alone multiple dwellings, because of its existing minimum lot width and frontage of non-compliant. We know that the site consists of two types of silt loam, and this is referenced from the feasibility study. We know that several of the abutting lots have issues with water ponding in their yards when it rains. We know that there's no on-site source of potable water or on-site sewage disposal, that any new development will require significant and costly infrastructure improvements. Once again, the water main is sufficient for drinking water, is not suitable for fire suppression. We know that there is potential for a Chapter 40B application, and I forgot her name. She was the consultant who spoke. Eileen. And she basically said, we're creating a new community here. There hasn't really been that much discussion with integrating with the existing community. She mentioned, and that seems to be the direction of the trust so far, that we're creating a new community called the Lily Pad Village. So we know that there is a potential for a Chapter 40B application. Waivers of variances will be requested for all non-conforming elements of the project, including density, length of the roadway. If this type of permit is sought, it will bypass existing processes and committees that the town has in place for reviewing these proposals. We know that the Conservation Commission and the Zoning Board of Appeals will be involved. We know that the planning committee would not be involved. That is a result of the way this is being structured. We also know that today you were trying to develop some consensus as to what a project might even be. To Donnie's point, and this sort of goes back to, I consider one of the deficiencies of the housing policy plan that Jan, I guess, will be presenting again at the planning committee. But why isn't that plan including vacant property, whether it's privately owned or municipally owned? Why isn't there a map in that plan of those properties so that we could all be looking at their suitability for affordable housing? I know Patrick is very well informed about various sites. We keep coming to the meetings. We frequently bring up sites that might be suitable. Don't you think in order to really round out that plan, it would be advantageous to include a map of vacant properties that might in some way feed into the housing?
Why don't you, Jan, do you want to respond to that question?
I do.
I do too. May I just say that we had a discussion at the last planning board meeting, which I think you were at, Jackie, that Michael and Canales and Michael Blay went through all of the town properties and made an assessment of whether any of them would be suitable for development. They identified one or two properties. Almost all of the other properties that the town owns are either on the side of a mountain, so the elevation means that it really wouldn't be feasible to build on it, or it's the land around the reservoir, which the water company owns, and probably would not be feasible for building major developments because it is on the reservoir. And there are only, in terms of the town-owned property, not the ones that are in court for lapse of ownership or whatever, is the town-owned property. There really aren't any. I mean, I think you can get a list of what the town-owned properties are on the town website. That's, so it's not that there's anything hidden. I think that there's just, in looking at the housing production plan, there isn't an inventory of properties that are available to town-owned that are available. I think there's one that's down by the Curtisville Bridge. But if you look at that property, which I went down and looked at, it is basically a gully that goes down to the water, the river or stream that's there, and goes right up fairly steeply to the road. So that's a possibility. It's an acre and a half or something along those lines. There's also a tiny property that's less than an acre, I believe, that's at the intersection of two roads. I don't have the address right in my memory at the moment, but I went and looked at that. You might be able to put one house on that because it's not even an acre. So I don't think, and it's, anyway, but I think that there is a list of properties that you can probably access through the town. So.
And why wouldn't it be appropriate to include that in the housing policy project? I mean, when we bought the property currently on Glendale Mill Road, the town property adjacent to us had been a cap land. And now we have a solar farm and cell phone tower there. The property behind us, I guess the Morris property, has always been woodland. And yet now that property's been donated. It was a vacant, privately owned parcel. Now that property has been donated and we're sitting here talking about its potential development. So we can back into affordable housing from the viewpoint of, let's do a series of variances around town when people donate property, or we can look proactively at privately owned vacant land or even municipal land that may have the potential in the future for development.
Mhm.
Looks like Patrick wants to say something.
No, I was just gonna frame it a little bit. First of all, we had extensive discussions when we were creating the housing production plan. We had extensive discussions around the question of how many overall units to include in the plan, what our 5-year plan would be. That's where the scale of what we're trying to do is laid out. And I believe the number we went with, correct me if I'm wrong, is 25 units, which was the minimum that we could put in there and have a housing trust and have a housing production plan rather. So, just tactically, Jackie, one thing I would recommend to you is get the housing production plan approved, because it's not the role of the plan to identify what potential properties would be. It is to, in aggregate, say, this is what the goal of the town is, and that is in writing now, and it's 25 units in 5 years. Like I said, we're already looking at other properties. Like, I think that ADUs, if we can get the state to free up some of the Section 8 vouchers where we don't nearly get enough of them, that could be a great way for people to justify putting an ADU in. That could be a whole strategy now that that law just came out that we're going to have to look at, for example. So, I think that the on the question of this parcel, I would just point out a couple things. One, I was on the board of Laurel Hill for 5 years. Hans and Kate offered that property for land conservation, and the biggest land conservation organization in town determined that it wasn't of conservation value. That was after I left the board. I did have a part in that vote, but I mean, it was offered to the trust.
On a ship.
The town formed the trust, and voted to do it. And our job is to build houses.
You could get it watching him.
Okay. I still think it would be very helpful for this policy document to include that. And I just wanted to mention, I was looking at some of the background material in the housing production plan, and it said, I quote, "The best locations for new housing development include," and then I guess the people who were at that meeting were supposed to choose the top 3, redevelopment of existing properties, 78%. So I think that that's something, in order to even consider redevelopment of existing property, there should be a portfolio included within the document that shows what the vacant property owned as well as publicly owned property is.
Well, and John made some wonderful suggestions earlier that we can certainly take into consideration.
Don Schneier's.
What's that?
Don.
Don Schneier's.
John.
No, Don.
Don. Oh, sorry.
Sorry.
I think, Jackie, that
I don't know him and I misheard.
to summarize, that we don't feel there's any publicly or town-owned land that's appropriate for development, which is why, and Jan can correct me, but Jan did do a rather comprehensive study of what we have on the town and felt that listing anything or a map would not be appropriate, because we don't really think any of them, we're not going to look at any of them because we don't think that they're appropriate for affordable housing. You may disagree with us, and that's okay, but that's the people who put the plan together thought about it and discussed it and decided not. And I think it's also not appropriate, in my opinion, being a private property person, that you put in a public document, private land that's empty, with the idea that people should start thinking that the town should go after private people's land. I just don't think that's our job, and that's not something I personally feel very comfortable with. If people like the Morrises want to come to us and say, I have 34 acres I want to give you, we investigated and thought about it and decided that we'd like to have it. And now we're going through the process, and we're happy to share that with you. We're happy to have you here, but we have to have our own time to be able to discuss these things. And we're happy to stay here and hear your questions. And I appreciate if people know, even though we meet at 3:00, that the public discussion, it's on the agenda, public comments as 9 on their agenda. They know if they come, close to 5, that'll be the time that the public comments. I can't guarantee that will go on and on,
Yeah,
but
actually, the count from 3 to 4.
I know it did.
The public wasn't even able to speak until 4:45.
Right, that was actually not, we always meet for 2 hours.
I got one other thing. First, I live across from Tanglewood and I have 0 bars. The only reason I can be on this call right now is because I can do Wi-Fi calling. I wish I had a cell tower next to me. I don't know, maybe some people think it, causes problems. I just know that there's many places in this county, I've been driving around it for 6 months, where, people I cannot leave my house and my phone won't work. And I'm on the phone all the time. So, I get that you guys got the cell tower, but I wish we did over here. Because I tell you, it is such an inconvenience to not have that. I'll tell you another thing. When I was growing up here, I had 15 kids I could ride my bike to in my neighborhood. All right. And now there's 0 kids in this neighborhood. And I think that when we talk about whether or not we cut down some trees that were frankly low value because it was mostly logged versus actually having people live in this community, I think it matters. I don't think that this was some snooker where we kind of like pulled the rug over the town. We basically are trying to recognize that we got to have people, young people with kids living in this town if we want to have a town in 20 or 30 years. And we got to put it somewhere. Now, I think it's reasonable to talk about scale, but our job is to build housing. We followed the law. We created an affordable housing trust. Our job is to build housing. We're going to build it somewhere, I hope.
Yeah, and I think it's a laudable and very important thing to do. I think what we're talking about is siting. And I think that's also a very legitimate concern. I also think that, when you talk about housing affordability without talking about the other pieces that go with it, transportation, school services, access to the library, what have you. Those are also very important considerations. And I think Karen, the earlier consultant, said, this is not that type of a plan. This is a housing plan. And so to a large extent, it's being done in isolation, which is problematical from my viewpoint. But at any rate, it's getting late. And I guess we will have other opportunities going forward.
You will have, every time we meet, you are very welcome. You are very welcome. But I hope you can understand from our point of view, we can't have the meetings go on and on and on and on when we can't get our work done. So that's why I want to condense. I want to be able to have time for us to discuss the things that we need to discuss, to take the actions that we need to take. And I'm pleased today we had that time. And I was very pleased with the discussion, and I hope you appreciated at least the thoughtfulness which everybody is really taking about what to do for the property. And we're going to continue. It's going to take some time and it's going to take some money. And I think we're committed to spending the proper amount of money to look carefully at this parcel and see what we can do with it. Because
you also, excuse me, I just wanted to follow up on, you just have to also understand, apropos Randy's comment, that there are things that we needed to discuss for our purposes, because the Commonwealth of Massachusetts meeting laws are such, we can't have those discussions between these meetings. We are prohibited from having these discussions. We can't email each other and basically have these discussions offline so that we can basically come to these conclusions, without taking your time, listening to us go through the machinations that we need to go through. We're prohibited from doing that. So we can't basically, we couldn't have this discussion and say, okay, we want to approve, $7,900 for DPC to go ahead and do it. We're not allowed to do that. The state laws prevent us from having those discussions, except in the context of a meeting which requires public notification and public presence.
Yeah.
So.
And Randy, to Randy's credit, guys, there is no requirement for public speak time in any public meeting. It's up to the chair. It is the sole prerogative of the chair. And we just spent 45 minutes listening to a whole bunch of mostly valid concerns that people have. And I think it's, we're not the enemy here, okay? There's no secret plan to build 72 units, all right? We're trying to figure this out. I literally have never built anything in my whole life, all right? I feel like kind of, we have a mission. Our mission is to try to keep the town affordable. And we're just trying to do that. And we're not trying to steamroll anything. So,
I think we've had some very respectful conversations. And I don't think there's any doubt that there's respect on the part of the trust to listen to the community. I just wish that going forward, the rules of engagement, so to speak, are made very clear, because we've all been sitting here for a while, and
But to
We
be.
could certainly think
it's-
about
No,
putting
it
that.
says, public comments are number 9 after all the other agenda items.
We could
And-
try to time it potentially. If you want to, you want to be a little more specific and say that, the first hour and a half will be blah, blah, blah. And then, starting at,
Well, I don't think that was the issue, and I realize it is late. I think it was more the issue that if something happens in very early on, then it is hard to really respond to that so that in a meaningful way, much later in the conversation, or it doesn't, you can't really build anything on it. You can't have any real kind of interchange because the moment has passed. I mean, maybe that's too bad or whatever, but I think that was the point, not so much.
well, I think,
It's listed as number 9, which it was, instead of 4:30 or 4:45, but rather that you could see you don't feel actually, you're welcome to say your piece at the end, but when everything is voted on and everything is,
No, to be fair, Nikki, we didn't vote on anything.
right.
well, see, kind
No,
of.
We voted on some expenditures that we needed to make in order to gather information. That's all. And Jackie and others brought up issues that were discussed earlier, that were rehashed in.
Jack is very good at that.
Well, irrelevant, that's irrelevant. The point is that there was an opportunity to rehash and to bring up, bring back into discussion, things that were discussed earlier in the meeting, if someone wished to do that. And I'm sorry, I cut you off, sir. I don't know your,
yes, you wanted to say something. Yes, Tom.
I didn't mean to cut you off before.
When this is all over and done with and the land is deemed unbuildable, what are you gonna do with it?
We're not addressing that question.
Yeah.
Well, no, but it is in the document that
It
it
is.
becomes a town park.
Yeah.
It just becomes open
It'll be
space.
up to the selectmen in the town. I
Yeah.
mean, the town owns it now. And if the trust can't come up with something that we can do with it that meets our agenda, then it goes back into the town, and the town will make a decision, and the select board and whatnot will decide what to do with it.
Well, but it also, at first, Mr. Morris has an opportunity to take it back.
No, he doesn't.
No, he does.
No.
Not authority.
He
I don't
does.
I
think
don't think so. I think it becomes open space.
I do too.
Yeah.
Okay.
Before we end, could you just, what time are we meeting next time? 5:30?
No, I think 3:00.
I thought.
And
we
we're gonna try to note for the community that, that public comments will happen at,
4:45,
4:30,
4:30.
4:45.
I
So
mean, I'm okay with meeting later so that folks
I
can
am
come
too.
after work. I thought
I
that
kind
was a
of like
reasonable
that too.
criticism.
Yes, it was.
All right, is that the consensus? People want to move it?
I would
Jan?
rather-
How about we move it to 4 or so that,
We can have dinner.
so it's
Yeah.
not, if we start at 5 or 5:30, then when are you gonna have dinner?
Right, we're gonna be here till 8 if we do that. So how about 4?
All right.
I'm good with 4.
Call the other boards meet. We can do it at 6 so people can eat before.
Yeah, but they don't go on as much as we do.
That's true. We don't go that long.
Okay. Well, at least people can stop in at the end during the question.
Right.
So that's good. All right.
Okay, we're now
4 o'clock.
consensus, everybody.
4.
4 PM.
Nod your head if
Bruce,
you're,
I Bruce 4.
all right, Jan's nodding.
4.
Liz, Patrick,
That's fine.
4:00,
Yep.
4. I think that works for Michaela. She's got 2 under 3 years old. So
And then we'll end at the same time as we're ending today.
No, I mean, it's 20 of 6 right now.
Right, I have to go to
Thank you
work.
all for coming. We appreciate it. Please come again. Nikki, don't get discouraged.
Oh.
We'll listen to you.
Will you
Motion to
do,
adjourn.
somebody please write down everybody who was in the audience, please?
Oh, my God. All right.
Thank you. That should
Jackie,
be done
Nikki.
every time.
Tom Forbes.
Peter.
Who's the gentleman? I don't know you. On the, Bill Holmes,
Bill Holmes.
okay,
Castle.
Castleville Road.
okay,
And how the people who left.
And don't forget to put Don down. He left.
okay.
I'm sorry, and you folks?
It's Tom Forbes. And
Oh,
I
oh.
don't know, I'm sorry, we haven't, all right,
Our neighbors across the street.
hold on,
Berensky.
oh, that's too much. Somebody's gonna have to spell your name.
BAREN
BARENSKA.
And your son,
SKI.
and your son has been to a lot of these meetings. Yeah.
Okay, and your names are
Peter,
Peter and
Suzanne,
Suzanne. With a Z or an S?
a Z.
Thank
Okay.
you.
All right, Suzanne.
And
Who
that's
else?
their
And who else,
last
who
name.
left?
Billy and Elaine Markham.
The Markhams
Oh, the Markhams, okay.
Billy-
and Don,
Billy and Elaine.
and Don Schneider.
Donnie,
I got
Yeah.
that. But who, Peter and Suzanne, what's your last name?
Berensky.
Borinsky, I've got it, Liz.
Okay, all right. I'm just trying to get it all in.
All right, Bill and Elaine Markham. Did anybody else leave? Oh,
Teresa?
Teresa. Teresa was here. What's Teresa's last name? Does anybody know?
Zanetti.
What?
Zanetti.
Could you spell it?
Zanetti.
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay, I think I got them all now. Thank you so much.
all right. I think we have a motion to adjourn.
Motion to
All
adjourn,
those in
second.
favor?
Aye.
And I
Who made the
thank you
motion?
all. Thank you all.
You too.